planning to have another special the week before Christmas. So we're going to do what we did for Black Friday again, the week leading up to the holidays. That'll be buy two, get one free on all the products. So if you haven't tried them out yet, go ahead and place an order, wait for that week, and you can get a bunch for a good price.
Hey guys, thank you so much for supporting us and watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more and get some of our merchandise like this awesome apron, be sure to check out our website at thecarnivorerevolution.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and today my guest is Matt Owens. He's a successful entrepreneur, a father to two adorable young boys and a new baby girl. He's a husband and has followed a meat-based diet for about 2 years, and he's also a friend. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
So Matt and I met at the end of August. Is that right?
Yes.
At the end of August, Matt had a meetup in his house in Colorado, and I was blessed to be able to go. It was kind of a last minute decision and one of the best decisions I've made because I made some really great friends there and got to meet some people that I already know from online. It was a really, really good time. So if you guys have a chance to go to a meetup, I highly recommend getting together with like-minded people and hanging out for a few days. So that's how Matt and I met. And for those of you that don't know, Matt is the inventor of the PowerPuck. So I like to start with your story, though, if you'll tell us how you got into eating healthy, how you, what made you decide to eat a meat-based diet?
Yes, of course. Try not to have it drag on too long, but I started really being health conscious in 2019, just after many years of working very hard and all the time and not really having time to focus on nutrition or health. I found myself, I'm about 5'9", and I was about 200 pounds, which is heavy for what my size was. And I started working out at that point in time, and I started just doing cardio exercise, started losing some weight, and started listening to a lot of podcasts on nutrition throughout 2020. And I really was just trying to stay diligent with my exercising in the beginning, and I was just kind of learning about different ways to eat. And then I found myself kind of falling into the trap of what a lot of people fall into, and that's really counting calories with the intent of eating less to lose weight. And so I was eating probably somewhere around 3,000 calories a day, just normally, and exercising, again, just doing cardio. And I started trying to eat more healthy, which ended up being less calories also, because what I thought was healthy to eat at the time was, green vegetables, even plant-based fake egg stuff. I didn't know anything about this, and eating some fruit in there. And I wasn't eating a lot of meat. If the meat I was eating was really fish or chicken breasts, but really my breakfast and was kind of like oatmeal with some blueberries. And then I would have kind of vegetables only and fruit for lunch. Just again, because I hadn't done any research on it. And I just thought, hey, I can stuff myself with these fibrous vegetables until I feel full, but they're very little calories. And so I continued on that path, and I ended up dropping all the way down to 147 pounds. Wow. So if you think about that, I was about 200 pounds, fell all the way down to about 147. It was in a couple of waves. I'd lost by the first 15 pounds, plateaued a little bit, then more and more, and kind of to break through each of those plateaus. What I had to do looking back on it, I didn't know what was really happening at the time, was I just ended up eating less or eating less high calorie, high nutrient dense food like meat or eggs, and substituting that for more and more fruit and more vegetables. And at the time when I was listening to kind of nutrition podcasts, I ended up coming across the typical episode of Joe Rogan that I think most people listen to. It was I listened to the Sean Baker episode and then the Paul Saladino episode. And that's when I kind of came across this carnivore, animal-based, meat-based diet. And so I got really into those podcasts, and I started listening to everybody, Chafee, and just listening to those every day when I would work out. And it took about 6 months of listening and my weight dropping as far down as it had, to where, I weighed what I weighed probably sophomore year in high school. And people were starting to ask if I was like sick and things like that. And I've always been a little bit of a more bulky person. And so at that point I was like, you know what, I need to stop doing just cardio. I need to start lifting weights, but I also need to start eating some protein, because after listening to these episodes, I kind of looked at my protein intake, and it had fallen down into the, 75 grams a day for a guy that's really low. I think that's low for really anybody now, but for myself especially, that was, I think, really low. And what ended up happening is I dropped a lot of body fat. I'm an engineer by background, so I track everything because I like data. I was doing DEXA scans throughout this whole thing. I was doing blood work throughout all of this, just checking on things and seeing what was happening. But I ended up losing a lot of muscle. So I lost a lot of weight, but I also lost a lot of muscle when I lost that 50 pounds. And getting to the carnivore diet was a way that I thought I could really up my protein intake. So I talked about it with my wife. If she didn't want to do it, I thought it was going to be difficult for me to do it. And I asked her and she just said, yeah, sounds good. Let's do it. So it was that easy to get her to want to try. And so we started, and this was, let's see, this would be like around the first half of 2022. So almost 2 years ago. And really, I ate nothing for almost for that entire time up until like a couple weeks ago. Only beef, eggs. Very rarely I would have some cheese, but it was mostly beef, eggs, bacon, pork, fish. And that was kind of what I ate that entire time. And just to tell you, everybody, kind of what happened to me, I'm one of those people that I'm up to 185 pounds now. So I gained 35 pounds when I started eating carnivore. Now that, I think, it's a combination of two things. Because again, when I started carnivore, I started actually lifting weights. So I spent almost 2 years doing only cardio, which was a big mistake. I wish I never would have done, but again, I didn't know what to do. But yeah, so I started lifting weights, started eating carnivore. I got my body fat up to what I think is a more healthy percentage for me, around the mid-teens rather than being in the single digits. And I also gained a lot of muscle. So on the DEXA scans that I've done, I gained probably 15 or 16 pounds of muscle in just over a year, which is, should be difficult to do for most people. But for me at that time, I think I lost so much muscle that I was kind of just putting back on what I had lost while I was doing a lot of that cardio and eating mostly kind of fruit and vegetables. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell for me over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think so many people lose so much muscle when they go on diets, and I've done it. Most people have done it. We go on those diets and we eat just, one serving of lean chicken breast, and we fill up the rest of our plate with vegetables, a little bit of, lower calorie fruits, because we are trying to lose weight, but we really don't want to lose our muscle. And that's so important. There are only 2 essential nutrients, and this does not come across. This is not, this information is not really available. Like, you're not going to find this in your food pyramid. You're not going to find this in your regular nutrition and dietitian information, but there are only 2 essential nutrients. One is fat and one is protein. And without either one of those, you will die. And that's where you were going wrong, right? Is you were not eating enough fat. You were not eating enough protein.
Exactly. I wasn't looking at the macros at all. I was only looking at the calories. And I was hungry all the time. I was ravenously hungry. And so what that led me to, not looking any deeper than calories, was the leafy greens and the fruit, because I could eat a ton of those to where my stomach felt physically full, even though the calories were very low. But then what would happen is it would only be a couple hours, 2 hours later, and all of a sudden I was going through the same hunger pangs again. I also wore a CGM during a lot of this time. I wore a CGM for just, I think, 13 months. And yeah, you could definitely see what I was eating. I wore it the last 6 months. I was pre-carnivore, and then I wore it the first 6 months of carnivore, which was extremely boring. But the last 6 months before carnivore started, it was a roller coaster. I mean, my insulin was going crazy because I would eat so much fruit every couple of hours. It was just going up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah, and that's what we need to teach people, right? Is you eat cereal for breakfast, your blood sugar goes up. As it starts to come down mid-morning, you feel like you got to have something. You go to the vending machine, or you get yourself a Snickers bar because it really satisfies. You get yourself something, you get yourself a pick-me-up. Blood sugar goes back up. Around lunchtime, as it's starting to drop and you're starting to lose your energy, you eat again and it comes back up. And that is not what we want for our bodies. That is not what we want for our blood sugar. That is why so many people are diabetics. That is why so many people have metabolic diseases. And I think it's so important to teach people about that. And a CGM is a great way, but you don't have to spend a lot of money on equipment like that. You can just cut out the carbohydrates and see how your body reacts. There's also a lot of inflammation. And so did you have any issues with oxalate dumping after you switched your diet over? Did you have any issues like that, like pain or things like that?
I was scared that was going to happen because I had been listening to um, Sally Norton's book, and so I assumed that was going to happen just because of how much vegetables I happen to be eating and fruit leading up to it. But it was actually a pretty seamless transition for me. I didn't notice any of that stuff happening. What I did notice that was really interesting is I lost I probably lost 5 pounds right when we started meat only, and I just hung there no matter how much I ate. And I was so hungry when we first started. I was eating probably 5,000 calories a day that first month, and that was just, I think, my body just starving for the nutrients that I hadn't been giving it. And I'd really been starving myself of fat because I was only looking at calories, and so obviously to keep my calories low, fat became kind of non-existent in my diet. So when we started eating this way, and I was telling my wife, I was like, let's just eat until we're not hungry anymore. I was like, I got to the point where I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to afford this because I'm constantly hungry. And so I was eating bacon, eggs, steaks for lunch, steaks for dinner. But it lasted, like I said, probably 3 or 4 weeks like that. And then it started to taper off a little bit. I think as I got a little bit more nutrients in my diet. And then as far as my physical appearance, what ended up happening is I slowly put on weight over the next probably year. And again, I think that was a combination of lifting weights again, doing resistance training, and just giving myself the fat and the protein that I wasn't giving myself prior to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what about your wife? What about Allison? Did she have any issues, or was it kind of a seamless transition for her too?
So for her, she never went full. She did a couple weeks of probably full carnivore like I did in the beginning. I stuck with it. What she eats is very similar to what our kids eat. We have 3 kids, 2 of them that eat kind of human food because the other one's a baby, so she's still on breast milk. But they eat all meat and eggs, and then they each have a little bit of fruit, mostly berries is what they like to eat. So they'll have some berries with dinner or some grapes. And then, our youngest, our year and a half old, he's been carnivore ever since he was born. So he never had any kind of sugary stuff or the stuff that we don't like to feed our kids. Where our older son, who's 4, he did have that in the very beginning. But our 1.5-year-old, he just, when he gets hungry for dinner, it's funny because one of the only words he can say right now is meat. And so he'll look at and see me at the grill, and he'll just start going, meat, meat. And he'll say that until we cut it up and bring it over to him at his plate. It's pretty funny to watch.
That's awesome. So how do you handle things like birthday parties and things like that when you go places where there's lots of other foods, sugary foods that all the other kids are eating, and Halloween and things like that? How have you handled that with the kids?
So we'll let them eat something if they go there. They don't eat it as much. What's interesting is you think if you go and offer them right now, frosting or a piece of cake or something like that, they don't jump to it. They'll say, okay, I guess I'll have some. Or and a lot of times we make kind of our own food a lot, or our own kind of healthy snacks, and they'll eat those. But if they do want to go to a birthday party and they have a piece of pizza or something like that, we'll let them do that and have a piece of cake if they want to. I don't really notice anything with them just because their metabolism at that young age, they can really burn through that stuff. But it's not something they ask us for all the time. They kind of know what we're going to eat. They always, like our 4-year-old, he always eats his meat first, and he'll always say, I finished my meat. And then he'll ask for ice cream or something like that. But I make a homemade ice cream that's very good. And it's, with a raw milk that we have and eggs, and it's pretty good. And so he likes to eat that a lot for his snacks.
And I have been there and I have had your ice cream, and it's amazing. And I make it like that at home now, with the milk or cream and the eggs and some protein powder to give it the flavor. It is so good. That's the only way I will make my ice cream now.
Yeah.
So what about you?
For
Yeah,
those
it
of
is.
you who
So
don't know, you got to just say what it is. So we
okay.
take half raw milk, half cream, mix those in a blender, I use 6 egg yolks, and then just put in a zero carb or close to zero carb whey protein isolate, whatever flavor you want, and it's delicious. Doesn't need anything more than that. Super high protein. Each kind of 4-ounce bowl after that is, I think, 20 grams of protein and 20 grams of fat. So great macros, and it tastes awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. I was making it without a protein powder in it, just the eggs in the cream and maybe a little bit of vanilla extract, but it has like taken it up a notch there when you add the protein powder to it. It's so good. So do you ever go off plan? Do you ever eat anything, that you shouldn't eat or that isn't on your diet?
So I didn't for most, or for basically the entire time. The only exceptions would be I don't drink alcohol, but on Thanksgiving and Christmas, when we have big family get-togethers, I had wine those years. So that was really the only cheating that I did that whole time. But I did recently start adding in some fruit just to see what would go on. And it's not because I don't want anyone to think it's because I felt bad or something like that. Like, I didn't feel bad at all. I just, like I've mentioned earlier, I'm a data nerd and I like to just see what happens when I do various things. For example, when I was carnivore, I did a 60-day test where I ate only very, very lean meat just to see what would happen. Basically elk, sirloins, and I ate that and egg whites for 60 days. Then I did a couple months of really high fat to see what would happen. And now what I'm trying is really adding in a little bit of honey in my yogurt in the morning, and then strawberries and some blueberries and an occasional banana just to see, how I feel adding that in, if my workouts change, if my body composition ends up changing in any way. So it's only been, I don't even think it's been 15 days yet, but I want to do that for probably 2 months, because I feel like you have to do something for really 2 months to see if it's going to start doing anything. 2 months, see what happens. I have no problem going back to steaks. I loved my diet when it was 18 months of just having a ribeye for lunch and dinner every day. I will say one thing that did happen. I feel fine now, but I did go through this. I had a couple of days, and Serena knows this, where my fingers, one day where my fingers hurt really bad. And I'm guessing this is oxalates issues, but my fingers hurt really bad. And it went away overnight when I slept. And the next day, the same thing happened to my toes. And it was just really weird. And then I had a couple of days of like red blotches on my skin that they didn't itch or anything like that. So I didn't even know they were there until I was getting ready to go to bed one night, and I saw them. But over the next couple of days, they kind of disappeared and then turned into, they felt kind of like a bruise, and then it went away, and nothing's happened the last week. But I don't know if that was oxalate issue or what it was, or just my body not really having any carbohydrates for so long. If it was going to persist, I definitely would have switched back, but I wanted to give it a couple of days to see what happened, and it ended up going away, and I haven't noticed anything since. But I did find that to be a little odd.
Yeah, I, of course, automatically blamed it on the fruits. And it probably was just a transition your body is going through. So it's interesting that it has stopped. And I'm curious to see how that goes. And your workouts are still the same, and you're not like, you still have enough energy and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I wasn't noticing a lack of energy. I wasn't having cramping issues. I wasn't having any trouble sleeping. All of that was, I think, is the same now as it was a couple of weeks ago. I really just wanted to see what would happen. I kind of got kind of stagnant. My weight was kind of holding around that 150 mark. My workouts have been good, and I was just thinking, what's something else I can try out, and really adding in the kind of light fruits, the berries and things like that is what I decided to test. I don't think I'll ever test adding back in vegetables or anything like that, but the fruits, my little kids love to eat that, and so I figured I'd try to do that too and see if it did anything.
Okay, now let's talk about your business, because you have one of the best keto and carnivore snacks that I have had. It's absolutely delicious. Two of my favorite foods now, besides like ribeye and prime rib, I guess. These are probably my favorites, but definitely for snacks. So you have the PowerPucks, and then you have the Super Chews, which are an electrolyte protein filled gummy. So let's talk about how you got started with that, and then we'll talk about the products. Like, what made you do that?
Yeah, so great question. When we started eating carnivore, what we noticed was it was difficult. There's kind of two things happening. One, it was difficult for us to find what we know. If we're going out all day, what do we eat? What can we bring? And at the same time, our oldest son was turning 2 around this time. It was 2 years ago, and he was just starting to not have baby food anymore, and transition to other things. And I couldn't find anything to buy them at the store that didn't have sugar and seed oils in it. It was either if it didn't have sugar, it was loaded with seed oils. Soybean oil is the first ingredient, safflower oil. Or if it didn't have any seed oils in it, it was loaded with sugars. So like the fruit bars and things like that. So that was kind of frustrating. At the time, I had been rendering a lot of my own tallow just for cooking. And we got the idea when we were actually on a trip, and we just thought, we put this protein powder in the ice cream and it's good. We put it in the yogurt and it's good. Let's find a zero carb protein powder. What happens if we mix it with the tallow? And so that's what we ended up doing to try to come up with like a tallow-based snack, because there really wasn't anything at the time that had tallow. You had carnivore bars, great. It has some tallow in it. But the PowerPuck is really, most of the calories are coming from the tallow. So it's really a kind of a fat treat is what I would say. And I ended up experimenting around with it. It was okay. It wasn't great. It was good enough to where I was just eating it myself. And then my wife one day, I was cooking a lot with crushed pork rinds at that time, breading chicken breasts and fish and stuff like that. And she said, why don't you put in some of those crushed pork rinds into that thing you're eating every day, which we end up calling the PowerPuck.
The concoction.
Yeah. And so I put it in there, and it gave the tallow a little bit of texture, a slight crunch, a little bit of texture, and it was really good. And then all of a sudden our kids were eating it. Our friends were eating it. And I was like, hey, if this is something people are going to want to buy, it's actually a thing that kids can eat, or adults can use it as a meal replacement. And it's got no sugar, it's got no seed oils, and it's really just a big bolus of healthy tallow saturated fat, and then about 35 grams of of protein if you're able to eat the whole thing. So here's one for those of you who haven't seen one yet. This is a PowerPuck. So this is 1,000 calories right here, and it's circular. That's why we call it PowerPuck. But yeah, each PowerPuck is going to be 1,000 calories, 90 grams of fat, 0 grams of carbs, obviously, and 35 grams of protein. The only ingredients in these are the tallow, the whey protein, the flavored whey protein that we use, and then pork rinds. And then there is a little bit of stevia and some natural flavors, some cacao and vanilla natural flavors to give it a little bit of that flavor. But that comes in the protein powder that we use. We also sell
but you also have an unflavored one.
Yes, that's good. We do have one that is unflavored that we call the natural PowerPuck. So that's for really hardcore people that are on the pure elimination diet. So all that's in this one is, and the natural puck is the beef tallow. We use beef protein in that one rather than whey protein, and then the pork rinds. So that one's pure carnivore, pure zero carb, no artificial sweeteners or anything like that. So that one's not going to have any stevia in it, but it'll have kind of a little salty, savory taste to it coming from the pork rinds. So that's actually one of our most popular flavors, because a lot of people are following that kind of strict elimination diet, and it's a good snack they can carry in their bag and just munch away on. And believe it or not, it might not look like it's very big, but I know very few people that can actually put down an entire PowerPuck. They're extremely satiating. So normally that's going to last you, especially for the women who buy our product, it's 2 or 3 meals. That's why we kind of put it in this Ziploc bag here so you can close it back up.
Yeah. And you also do have ones made with cacao, right?
We do. We make them also with a cacao base. Personally, I think tallow is the most nutritious fat that we could be having. But what we really wanted kids to be able to eat this as well. And what was stopping that is not a lot of people even know what tallow is anymore, let alone what the texture is. And those of you listening to this probably are well versed with tallow. It's a little bit waxier. It's got its kind of unique texture. And if you know that, then you're usually fine eating the tallow-based PowerPuck. But kids, especially kids under 10 years old that have been eating nothing but Snickers bars and Kit Kats for the last 5 years, it's very difficult to get them to switch to eating something with tallow, because they're like, hey, this doesn't taste like the candy I buy at the store. So we did end up making PowerPucks and pocket PowerPucks in a cacao base. And the reason for that is that's what a normal candy bar is a cacao base. So this is actually a bag of some of our pocket PowerPucks. We also sell them in kind of bite-sized pieces. This is what the kids eat the most of. This is a cacao one. This is cacao chocolate peanut butter. But they can eat that a lot better because it tastes a lot more like what they're used to. So that's kind of why we went with the cacao base. It helps a lot of people switch over to the tallow. A good example is my 4-year-old who started eating unhealthy food when he was 2. He still deals a lot better with the cacao base, whereas our 1.5-year-old, he's never had anything but the tallow pocket pucks, and he just loves the tallow ones. And that's the first thing he had, and he loves those. So it takes a little while to get him to transition, but that's kind of in a nutshell why we did use a cacao base as well, is just to try to help people that might be a little shocked by the texture or flavor of tallow to start with.
Yeah, and I love how you said that when you're doing like taste tests and stuff, if people say, "Now, what is tallow?" You say, "Oh, you might like this cacao one." Like, because if
Yeah.
people don't already know what tallow is, they might, the texture can put some people off. It's just a different kind of texture. It reminds me of like biting into a wax almost. And it doesn't melt in your mouth or anything like that. The tallow, it's really interesting what the tallow does when you're eating it, but they are really delicious and it's easy to get used to. And then you have another product that I really love.
Yes, we got one more product this is our newest product. We actually launched this one probably a month and a half or 2 ago. And these are called Super Chews. We sell these in 3 different flavors, but essentially what they are is, I hate calling them this, but I'd say they're like a gummy bear or like a fruit snack. And they're like that, but they taste like that, but they have none of the other stuff in them that you don't want your kids or yourself to eat. What we tried to do with these was, again, use as least amount of ingredients as possible. And for this, we tried to make something that was almost pure protein. And this is pure protein. The PowerPucks are great at addressing people who are under eating fat, especially saturated fat. But we also think a lot of people, especially women and children, under eat protein. And having a handy snack that you can get a good amount of protein on is very hard to find at the store, especially if you go look through the protein bar section at the store. You don't want to eat a lot of that stuff. What's in these? So these Super Chews, each package is 100 calories, but it's 25 grams of protein. So every single calorie in this entire pack is from protein. And what the 3 main ingredients that make these up is grass-fed beef gelatin, unflavored whey protein isolate to add the protein, and then we use a flavored electrolyte to give it the flavoring that it has. And that's really what is in these. They're delicious. We have a peach mango flavor, a passion fruit flavor, and then this one's our sour punch flavor. So sour punch is going to be, again, like if you were a person who liked to eat Sour Patch Kids before, you'll really like eating these. The way we get these sour is just with citric acid. So there's no sugar or anything on the outside like there is on normal Sour Patch Kids, but they're very tart and they're delicious. And again, just 25 grams of protein in this little bag. They're great to throw a couple in your purse, your backpack, or for us, I give my 4-year-old when he goes to school a couple days a week, I just put one of these in there. He eats that as a snack. And it's great. Again, it's a clean snack that they can have, and all their friends like it too, which is also encouraging. I think this is something that will catch on with a lot of people, especially those people who are looking for something to feed their kids that they would be willing to eat themselves.
Yeah, and I actually had some that I kept in my purse when I was traveling back from visiting you back at the end of August, and it melted, but it doesn't matter because it's still edible. It just took on kind of a shape of its own, but they were still really good. And it's definitely one of my absolute favorite snacks. I'm actually waiting for a box, and I think I just heard the mailman outside. And so I'm probably about to go downstairs and have a pack of those because I love them so much. It's one of my absolute favorite snacks. I just think it's so cool how the idea struck you and you just kind of went for it.
Yeah, it took us a while to figure it out how to make them, but the reason they melt, again, they'll melt it really if it's 90 degrees or higher. So as long as you don't keep them in the sun, like if they're sitting in your purse on the passenger seat of your car, then they're probably going to melt. But as long as it's under 90 degrees, they hold their shape pretty good. What I found out in experimenting with these recipes is the reason normal gummy bears don't melt is because there's so much sugar in them, so much corn syrup. So they put all that corn syrup in there that so much so that bacteria can't even live. So there's no way for those to mold because there's so much sugar in it. And because there's so much sugar, they don't melt until the temperatures get much higher. So it was it was difficult coming up with a way, only using the three main ingredients that we use, to come up with something that hangs around. And these work great. We just have to cure them for a while after we make them. But after that, they hang out pretty good in the bag, and they're delicious.
Okay, so just pick up with that. Like our kids love to eat them, their friends love to eat them. I'm hoping it'll help other people.
Yeah, our kids love to eat the Super Chews. Their friends love to eat them. We just had a birthday party. All the kids were eating Super Chews. So it's just great to have a high protein snack with none of the other junk in it that you can feel good eating yourself or giving to your children.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I'm so glad you came up with it. I love it when a good idea comes to fruition like that and other people love it too. That works out great. And it's really a great product. I recommend it to everybody. I really do.
Thank you.
And so I guess that wraps it up. I'm going to have Allison, your wife, on at some point, and we're going to talk about carnivore pregnancy, or mostly carnivore pregnancy, and having babies and how she handled all of that also. So I can't wait for that.
Awesome. That'll be a great episode to listen to as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt.
And just for everybody listening, we're planning to have another special the week before Christmas. So we're going to do what we did for Black Friday again, the week leading up to the holidays. That'll be buy two, get one free on all the products. So if you haven't tried them out yet, go ahead and place an order, wait for that week, and you can get a bunch for a good price.
That's awesome. And the website is thepowerpuck.com.
Yep, thepowerpuck.com.
Thank you so much, Matt. And thank you for joining us here on the Carnivore Revolution.
Thanks, Serena.